Good afternoon, and thank you to everyone for joining this online event to help you engage young people in growing trees from seed. It's such an important audience to reach. The young people that you're working with today are the future generation who will take over the Nature Recovery Challenge. So it's a really great time to reach them, to engage them, to enthuse them in growing trees from seed. So today we're going to go through a number of different elements that relate to growing trees from seed. We're going to be looking at a seed gathering calendar. We're going to be looking at how we identify trees and seeds and how we process seeds once we've gathered them. My name is Katie Rafferty and I am the National Schools Officer for the Tree Council. And I also have with me today Matthew Knight, who is, I've only put one of his titles on there. He is a man who wears many hats. He is a teacher and head of sustainability at Shinfield St Mary's Junior School. He is the founder of his own charity, Feeling Fruity, which is fruit tree related, as you may have guessed. And he's also recently joined us working with the Young Tree Champions as a regional lead. So before we go any further, I will let Matt just talk to you a little bit about what he does at Shinfield St Mary's in terms of engaging young people in trees and nature.
Good afternoon, thank you for joining us. So I'm just going to do a whistle-stop tour of what we do at Shinfield. As you can see from the pictures, quite a few different things. I'll go through them. So the latest one is the top left corner. We are now a tree nursery. We're just starting to ramp that up. The picture to the right of that is the RHS Schools Gardening Challenge, which before COVID we entered every year. Then as we move across, we have some aquaponics systems in our school. You can see there we've got strawberry plants being grown by fish in tanks. On the right of that one, that was one of our ex-head gardeners. We constructed a artificial stream with the idea of giving water to wildlife and pollinators. That's not its finished state, it should be pointed out. Then we've got the Thunder Bus. That's a repurposed 1980s bus, which has been fully redeveloped by the loving parents of our school. That's now used for SEND children in our school. It's a really great space for them to spend break times if it's a bit overwhelming out in the playground. Then next to that, we've got a bulk greenhouse. That isn't actually our one, but ours looks very similar to that. 1,500 bottles we used to construct it. And this year, I think we've grown some in the region of about 400 to 500 tomatoes inside of it. So it's actually pretty useful. Then next to that, the raised beds. We have 24 of those in school. 8 are for flowers and 16 are for produce. And then coming down in this bottom left-hand corner, we about 4 years ago got hold of an old vending machine and converted that into a book vending machine, which was pretty cool. Picked up quite a lot of local press interest in that one. You can now buy those, but obviously it was a lot cheaper to do that. To the right of that is a hugelkultur. For those of you who've come across one before, it's a Scandinavian no-dig method of growing. And again, we've grown last year, I think it was 23 squashes off of it, and this year I think it's probably going to be around 30 to 35. So they all go to food banks. So that's really cool. Then there's a picture on the bottom right hand corner. That's the roofs of our school, which we recently had 91 solar panels installed up on there. And all of these different things have helped to get us featured at the last 3 COP events, and we're due to go to the 4th in a row. So very, very cool.
Fantastic, thank you, Matt. As you can see, Matt is an absolute expert on sustainability, on nature work, on tree initiatives within schools, and he is going to be giving us some advice on how he has practically embedded some of these ideas in how you engage young people in growing trees from seed. And as he mentioned, his school is already on the journey with a community tree nursery, which is a fantastic initiative. Okay, so what we're going to cover today in this session, we're going to have a whistle-stop tour of growing trees from seed and how we engage young people in that, talking about the magic of trees, how we plan that seed growing, how seeds are made, the great seed gather, the exciting forage for tree seeds themselves, sowing the seeds, planting out our young trees and then how we care for them. Really important, because we're not just talking here about planting tree seed, we're talking about growing trees from seed. So it's not just the act of planting the seed we want to see those trees mature and grow into the beautiful, versatile, useful, important champions for our planet that they deserve to grow into. So it's also about the aftercare as well. There is a question and answer function on this webinar, so please feel free to use it as we go, and there will be an opportunity to ask any questions at the end that you may want, either to me or to Matt. Now, we are very delighted to have been involved, along with Hampshire County Council, who have created the Young Tree Growers Guide with the Tree Council. So we have worked together to create an online resource that is completely free to help engage 7 to 11-year-olds in discovering the amazing superpower of trees and how to grow trees from seed. This online resource, like I said, is completely free. The details, the web address will be shared with you. We will email them out to everybody who has joined this webinar. And you can simply Google the Young Tree Growers Guide and you will find all of those resources on there. Really conveniently, you can either download the entire guide if you want to go through the whole process from start to finish, or you can download resources individually or certain sections if there are certain bits that seem particularly relevant to you and the young people that you're working with. It's completely up to you how you use this guide. And of course, like I said, if you've got any questions as we go through, please do ask us. But there are far more resources in that guide than we can even touch upon in this webinar. I just want to say before we go any further, a big thank you to Hampshire County Council and Hampshire Forest Partnerships. Hampshire County Council has a target to plant 1 million trees by 2050 as part of its climate change and nature recovery plans. And Hampshire Forest Partnerships has been set up by the County Council to deliver this aim, working with communities, landowners, businesses and organisations. So this Young Tree Growers Guide that has been created in partnership with the Tree Council is just part of that work to deliver that aim, that amazing target of 1 million trees by 2050. So a big thank you to Hampshire County Council and Hampshire Forest Partnership for engaging us in this project and this really exciting and hopefully for you really useful guide that will help you along the journey of growing your trees from seed. Firstly, I just want to touch upon why you would be growing trees from seed, why you would be doing this additional task that you might not usually be doing, that you might not have tried before. Firstly, it's just so important in tackling that climate and nature emergency, playing your part and your young people playing their part in tackling that emergency. It also has really positive impacts on their mental health and well-being, being outdoors, getting their hands dirty, feeling like they're making a difference and doing something useful, something that they can be really proud of. It also creates a free resource. So these trees that you might be looking to buy for, applying for funds for from elsewhere, you can have even more of them by creating these free resource from seed yourselves in your school. And there are really useful links to the curriculum. So linking to science curriculum, numeracy, PSHE, geography, all sorts of different curricular links that you can apply when you are growing these trees from seed. So not only are you doing a great thing for the environment with your young people, but you can be linking to their curriculum education as well. For us, one of the great ways to start this is to helping young people understand the magic of trees. For them to be engaged in growing trees from seed, the first question might well be, why? Why am I doing this? So helping them understand the value of trees, the amazing thing that they're contributing to, is a really good place to start. Helping them to care and respect for trees when they understand the magic that they hold within them, the potential that they have to make a difference. And understanding just how vital trees are to our world and our planet around. Some may well know that, some may well have some information, but really opening their eyes will help engage them in that journey of growing a tree from seed, helping keep them engaged all the way through when they understand the benefit of what they'll do. So some ideas that we have for this: you might want to explore the amazing nature that trees support. Trees themselves, to some young people, can be extremely beautiful. To some, they will be far more excited by the idea of hedgehogs snuffling around in the hedgerows, in leaf litter. Well, trees are supporting all of this different wildlife. They're supporting the insects, the mammals, the birds, and it's helping them to understand that. Now, All of the resources that you will see on these slides today are within the Young Tree Growers Guide. And as often as possible, we will encourage you to get outside and be learning outside as much as possible to keep these experiences memorable and exciting for young people. And one of the things that you might do is go and explore the environment around a tree, explore the habitat, find what's living there, find what's living in a hedgerow within your school site. Within the Young Tree Growers Guide, you can see identification tools that will help your young people identify what it is that they found, what beasts and creatures they found in the trees and the hedgerows, and help them record that. So they can become scientists, they can start to record this information, become ecologists, and see what kind of nature that a single tree within your school grounds could be supporting. Another way is to show them about the magic of trees is the benefit to humans. So there are tasks and resources in there that can help your young people explore the different benefits that trees have to humans, whether that be the food they provide, the fun you can have in terms of playing around, climbing trees, the relaxation and the calming effect you can have by sitting under a tree in the shade of a tree to do a task that you might normally do indoors, like read a book. Exploring all of these different benefits. This could be explored within the classroom. We've got worksheets within the resource that you can do, or you can explore these and experience the benefits to humans by being outside and doing these tasks outside in the school grounds, by taking the worksheet outside and doing it outside. Just exploring nature, being in nature can put a whole different spin on things for young people. So showing them that benefit of trees just by being around them. And another way that you can explore that can also have a significant effect on mental well-being. I know that we, as generations of young people, are more and more challenged by the circumstances in the world around us in terms of their effect on mental well-being. I know that more and more fantastic work is being done with young people and in schools to promote positive mental well-being. And getting into nature, being amongst trees, is a really positive way of doing that. So there are some sensory exploration tasks within the Young Tree Growers Guide that can help to explore nature through the senses in a mindful, grounding way that can have that real positive impact on mental well-being. Matt, I know that you've done some work with your pupils in terms of exploring the benefits of trees in school grounds. Do you have any other tips or any other activities that you've done?
Yeah, so there is a really brilliant resource apart from the things you've already mentioned. Quite a popular one with the children is a mini beast hunt, but rather than being under rocks and in the bushes, going a little bit higher and looking in the trees, you'll be surprised at just how many different insects and other little critters will be living in there. Obviously, you're not going after squirrels. It will be things like caterpillars and beetles and things like that. But yeah, this could be used from a number of different purposes. You can either do identification charts and have children using that for science, or it could in fact be used to try and figure out if they're at their larval stage, if they're at their adult stage. There's so many different things you could do with the little critters up in the trees. And then from that, you can either take a literacy perspective from that and do some writing, or you could do some drawing of the guys, or even just taking photographs and trying to make some kind of key so that to help other children to identify it. I think also as well, as you were saying, with the well-being, something we did recently, and I'll be incorporating this in my school, which is really useful, is just removing vision, putting a blindfold on a child or on an adult even. If you take away that primary sense of sight, you'll be surprised at how many more things you'll start to notice. So putting a blindfold on, getting up close and personal with a tree, it's, you know, exploring the bark and the smell, the sound, and there's so many different things that children will start to notice. It will enrich their learning far beyond what it would do with if they just looked at it and said, that's a tree, it's green, those kind of things. So those would be two that I'd recommend.
Fantastic, thank you, Matt. And what is this really is helping to do at the very start of your project of growing trees from seed is building that connection with trees and making young people feel connected and feel like trees are something that they want to be part of, that they want to help and they want to contribute to. So that would be the place that we would suggest you might start when you're growing trees from seed. The next bit, before you start going out and gathering that seed, before you go rummaging around underneath trees for a seed that might have dropped, please do plan ahead. consider where your trees are going to fit into the future landscape, whether it's on your school site or in your community. And consider the responsibility of caring for young trees. So like we said, it's not just planting the seed in a pot, job done. It's about helping them grow to maturity. So it's that ongoing care that they'll need. So think about who the people are that might be engaged in that. Ensure that you've got the plans in place so you don't end up in a situation in a year or 2 years where you've got a lot of seeds that have grown into young trees that don't have a home or that are struggling to be cared for. We say, make sure you've got the right tree for the right place. There's a resource within the Young Tree Growers Guide where you can look at a plan for a school. You've got different species of tree there and you can work out which one would be more suited into which location. If you've got one space to plant in your school in front of a building, you might not want to plant huge species that are going to grow and block all of the light going in through your window. You might need to think about which species you grow there. It might be something that attracts wildlife that you want to see from the window, but that isn't too huge. So we've got some information in there that might help you think about that. Another thing that I would like, in fact, before I go on further, I feel like Matt possibly could jump in with some experience in this very area.
Thank you, Kay. Yeah, so learning by mistakes seems to be key development point for me. So on our ground, our school is located on a street called on a crescent called Chestnut Crescent. That will give you a bit of a hint as to the majority of the trees in our area. Probably about 100 horse chestnuts. So we are very, very fortunate with chestnut seeds. So last year we went around and collected as many chestnut seeds as we could possibly get. And around about 400, I think. We merrily potted those all up. And in my tree nursery now, I have circa 200 plus chestnut trees that nobody really wants. The problem is, as Katie was saying, it's really about getting the right tree for the right place. And chestnut trees grow enormous and they grow very, very quickly as well. And so I think it's not just about selecting your trees. It's about, your target audience. Where are those trees going to go? That's just as important as everything else, because if you have no future plan for where you're going to be sending these trees, you're going to be stuck with a large number of trees. We're fortunate that I can probably get away with planting a few of those on my site, but other than that, I'm going to have to go back to the drawing board, and I'm either going to have to keep them as bonsai. I'm not too sure, but yeah, you have to be really careful about which seeds you collect and the area and the type of soil that you have, I'd say. So yeah, don't just because you have a lot of them doesn't necessarily mean it's a good thing to grow them.
Perfect, thanks Matt. And yeah, learning through experience. Thank you for passing that on to share your wisdom with us so that we can all learn from that. And we do have more, and I will touch upon them, some more resources within the guide that will help you identify species that might be more suitable. There's a little bit of information you can see on screen there that does mention chestnuts can grow to be very large. But yeah, there are some more that might help you identify species. We have focused within the resource on species that are fairly readily available across the UK, but that might be more suitable for young people to grow. Some of them are more faster growing species. We do understand that young people might want to see results as fast as possible, but there is plenty of information to help you make decisions within the Young Tree Growers Guide as well. And it also includes a calendar, so it's really useful to look at when to do certain parts of the process. We are now in seed gathering season. Welcome guys to seed gathering season. It started on Saturday, just gone, and runs through to the 23rd of October. So now is the perfect time to get out and gather seeds, and I will go into that in a little bit more detail in terms of what that means and how you do that. It is worth bearing in mind that climate does affect seed gathering season. It's not always at the exact same date, but you might start to notice that actually some seed is ready slightly earlier, as dependent upon climate. And that's just something to be aware if you continue to grow trees from seeds in the future. Like I say, we will go over different processes such as stratifying and how to sort and care for your trees. But just to draw your attention that this calendar with all those dates and months to be working on these things is in the guide, and it is definitely worth following to make sure that you are processing your seeds, that you are sowing your seeds at the right time of year that's best for them. The next step that we consider looking at is how to make trees from seed. So how do trees go about making their seeds? This is something that's really useful in terms of it linking to the curriculum, in terms of a lot of young people want to know, how does something work? And this gives them that really useful background info, as well as linking to the curriculum. So knowing the parts of a tree, which obviously links to a plant and links to the curriculum, parts of a flower, understand how pollination and seed dispersal occurs. That can also help you develop your ground if you understand the importance of these things. If your young people understand the importance of these processes, then that can help them decide how your grounds might be developed further to support these processes. One thing I'd suggest you mention as you're working on this is to touch upon the importance of pollinators. Really important in terms of pollinating trees. Obviously, some trees are pollinated in different ways. Some are pollinated by wind, but pollinators are really key to our trees, to other aspects of our nature, and something really useful to support. So we've got different resources in there that you can do, such as observing different pollinator activity, keeping a record, doing a tally. You might repeat this year on year and see how that changes. If you diversify your grounds, if you do some planting to try and support pollinators, you might repeat this to see if it's had an effect and to see if it's seen a difference. There's some suggestions on there about growing, creating habitats for pollinators and different insects, and leaving areas of grass and mown. There's also some step-by-step guides on how you create some of those habitats. Matt, I believe you've done some work in your school in terms of developing areas for pollinators, or that attract pollinators.
Yeah, done several things. So obviously, pollinators are a little bit like us. They need to eat and they need to drink and they need somewhere nice to have a kip. So just have to provide those three things really. We have created bug hotels, which is quite a fancy way of doing it. But actually, to be honest, you could just collect some twigs and logs and make a log pile. That'll suffice. It's just the same kind of thing. Water is really important. Again, we've gone quite extravagant. We've got ponds and streams, but that's not necessarily required. Could just have a dish with water, but obviously make sure that you put lots of small rocks in there, because otherwise you'll just have bug soup, because they'll drown in it, which is kind of unfortunate. Is what you really want to avoid. And then things like butterflies, they tend to prefer, you can get butterfly boxes, you can make them pretty much like a bird box, but just with slats in them, so they're very easy. There's guides online to do that, or you can buy them. And then finally, obviously, you need some food throughout the year to keep your little winged friends in the area all year round, so that when your different trees are pollinating, producing their pollen, your insects are on hand. So wildflower meadows, again, very simple, just a case of, I say very simple, just have to remove the turf off the top of a small area, or large, depending on how big you want to go, and then sprinkling wildflower seeds on it. And then it's a case of making sure you regularly water it, and then nature will do the rest. And you'll be really amazed at how many pollinators will rock up if you just provide a small area. So if you go large, you'll have thousands and thousands. So all of those things really help to encourage pollinators in.
Thanks, Matt. And something you touched upon then was different pollinators will like different food and will have flowers available at different times of the year. Always worth thinking about when you're selecting your seeds to sow and to grow a tree from, is to have some diversity. So if you've got space for 5 trees, they don't have to be 5 trees of the same species. And the more diversity, the more pollinators, the more insects, the more wildlife you'll attract, and also the more resilient they'll be if there is any kind of disease or pest that might attack one of your trees. It might not necessarily be attracted to the other species that you've got there. So do think when you are selecting your tree species, about having some diversity in there as well. Another thing that the resources touch upon is seed dispersal. Different types of seeds that are out there. So talk about winged seeds, nuts, fleshy fruits, corns. This is something that can be really engaging to young people for many different reasons. One particularly, fleshy fruits are eaten by birds that are pooped out, and that helps to disperse the seeds. That's something young people find hilarious and exciting, all in one. And the fact that the birds provide the fertilizer for the seed, it's something that for whatever reason will always be an enjoyable topic to talk about for young people. As well as you can do other fun and engaging tasks, such as, if you focus a little bit on wing seeds, you could do a seed design challenge where they have to create some kind of flying contraption to disperse a seed the greatest distance possible. Drop the designed seeds past a fan that is on and see who gets the furthest. Or if it's a windy day, drop it in the same place at the same time and see who gets the furthest. They might design parachutes, they might design wings. They come up with some wonderful creations to help nature along with seed dispersal. So you can get as creative as you like. It can link to technology as well as science and measuring the distances, etc. So all sorts of different ways that you can explore how seeds are dispersed in nature, and fun ways that we can explore that ourselves in the classroom and outside the classroom. Then gets to the bit that is super exciting. It's the great seed gather, the treasure hunt. They're going outside, they're rummaging around and trying to find seeds that are going to create the trees for the future. So some things to think about in this bit, we can touch upon how to gather seeds safely, how to ID the seeds that we find. As we've touched upon, we want to think about the trees that we're growing, and if we found a seed and we've got no clue what it is and we sow it, we've got no clue what it's going to grow into, how tall it's going to get. So that's something to think about, and then how we process those different seeds. So there's all sorts of resources in there, all sorts of support to help you with this seed gathering element. This, I would say, is the biggest section of the Young Tree Growers Guide, just because there's all sorts of different support resources available to you. One of the first ones that's quite fun to do is just identifying that it's time to gather seed, that it's seed gathering season, because I'm imagining young people might not yet have it in there as a phone alert within their diaries. So it's going out and playing a game of bingo, looking for these signs that it is seed gathering season. So on the left of this screen, you can see a resource there, looking for mushrooms or fungi growing on trees and logs, looking for plants with fruits and berries like brambles growing, flowering ivy. Ivy will tend to flower around this time of year, and they can tick off as they walk around your school grounds the sign that it's time to gather seed, and they can ready to start the seed growing process. I mentioned that there was more resources in there about the different species of trees and whether they're suitable for you, help you select the ones that are more suitable for you. So there are some tree trunks cards in there that look at the different heights of trees, the amount of biodiversity, the speed that they grow is one that often young people are very interested in. They want to see something grow as quickly as possible. So if they're going to be in your school for the next 5 years, then are they going to see much of a difference? How long can it live for? That's something that you do need to bear in mind if you are not growing this on your own land. If this is not somewhere that you own, if you're growing in your garden, then you can plant what you like. It's your permission. If you are the landowner, but it is something to bear in mind that some of these trees will be around for a very long time, for future generations, which is a wonderful thing. But you might need to think about where you're putting them. The other thing is, if you're planting somewhere that there could be development, or there's the potential for development in certain sites, you might want to put somewhere that you think is less likely to be developed in the near future. On the right is a resource that is a record. So once you've gathered your seed, it's worth noting down where you gathered it from. So your young people can record that they've gathered so many acorns from this particular oak tree on site. That's useful because if in future years you want to go and gather more seeds, you've got a record of where you gathered seed from. You can also make a note down about how successful these tree seeds were in terms of their germination and what percentage of them then grew into trees. So it's a nice way to keep that information to be able to go back to if you are continuing this process, if you are repeating this process. And another one that I mentioned there was seed identification. So we have selected species that we think, as I've mentioned, are more common, that you will come across, that you might be most interested in growing from seed, that might have the most value in your school sites. We've got in there, you can see on the right, we've got images that might help you identify the trees around your grounds. So they're images of the leaves, images, you can see there the silhouette of the tree, roughly how big it is, what the flowers look like, what the leaves look like, what the seeds look like. So they will help you to identify those. And there's another sheet there that you can see on the left. So as your pupils or young people are out gathering seed, they can place that seed in the middle of it and see which of the seeds around that it it is. What does it look like? Turn it over, turn it round, compare it to those images around, and that will hopefully help them identify the seed, so that you can make sure if you're looking for hazels, or if you're looking for acorns in particular, you've identified that you would like some rowan trees growing. When they're gathering seed, they can decide, actually, is that this type of seed I'm looking for, or is it not? We would recommend that if you are intending to grow 10 trees, you don't gather 1,000 seeds, or if you do, that you provide them to a local tree nursery or someone that can use them. Basically, we're saying take what you need, because when you don't, some seeds will naturally germinate and seed in nature. Some will be eaten and support wildlife. So rather than taking it away and keeping it in a jar and not using it, we recommend that you take more than you think you will need in terms of trees, because they won't all germinate, but do bear in mind that nature does need some of the seeds itself. So try not to take too many, and try to make sure there are some left on the tree and in that surrounding area around the tree. Also, make sure that you've got permission from the tree owner or the landowner that the tree is on if it's not in a public place. We do also have some resources within that section about the health and safety of gathering seed. We don't recommend that you or your young people climb to the top of a tree to get the seed that's not been picked or hasn't yet fallen, that it's within arm's reach, that you look around, you can find nettles and brambles around there. If seeds have dropped on the floor, we would definitely recommend, once you've picked your seeds, that your young people wash their hands thoroughly once they get back to school, or once they get back to a suitable place. And we would suggest that you collect seed in a brown paper bag. When you collect them in things like plastic and you take them back and leave them in plastic, they will sweat, they will get moisture, they will lose their quality a little bit. So we would suggest that you collect them in a brown paper bag. You might want to take a few out, or you might want to take a few different containers to collect them in, and keep the different seed species separate to avoid that big sort of a jumble that you get at the end of the day after you've done your seed collection. Once the seeds have been collected and the treasure gathered, and you return to your school, it's time for the processing element of growing trees from seed. And this bit can be really fun as well. This is a bit that young people can really get engaged in, really enjoy. I know that we were at a school in Hampshire recently doing some seed processing with some Key Stage 2 pupils who were fantastic at it, really enthusiastic, and really got involved and engaged in the process. So there are different ways to process different types of seeds. And in the guide, you will find information on each of those. Nuts are a fun one to process. So you might have your acorns, your hazelnuts. Acorns technically are not nuts, but are treated like nuts. Your hazelnuts, your horse chestnuts, your walnuts. Grab a bowl of water, gather all of the seeds that you've gathered, and drop them into that bowl of water. If they float, they fail to develop properly. So they're not going to germinate, they're not going to be successful. If they sink, then they are ones that are more likely to germinate and to continue the process will. Unfortunately, the ones that float, you're going to have to get rid of. So discard them outside. If they still have a value to nature, they can still be eaten, they can still biodegrade and feed things, but they're not going to grow into trees, I'm afraid. So they're the ones that you get rid of. Matt, do you have an important point about storing seeds such as nuts?
Yeah, again, but this is great because this is a lot of what we did in our school. So when we collected them in pots, which is fine. Like I said, be careful not to mix them up, because that becomes some kind of nightmare, especially because there's 3 different types of oak. So they look similar, but they're not going to be the same. Then obviously where you store them is very, very important. We have a very fat mouse that lives in our greenhouse. Unfortunately, he managed to eat the majority of my sort of more fancy seeds last year. So he ate all of the hazelnuts, literally every single one. He ate all of the sweet chestnuts again. Didn't really like the horse chestnuts, amazingly. But the magpies had a go at them as well. So it's really tricky because mice can get into the smallest of gaps. So there's not if you've got a mouse in where you're storing your seeds, you're going to have trouble to try and prevent that. Obviously, they've got as much right to be there as we have. So you have to use a very fine mesh. I use chicken wire, which kept the birds out, but it didn't keep the mice out. And in fact, actually, not only did we have problems with mice, but we had another very strange one, which was in our acorn. So we use leaf mulch in bread trays, the sort you get from M&S or Sainsbury's, donated to the food banks. And we had them all lined in there, and they were all stacked up neatly. Some nice chicken wire across the top. And unfortunately, a robin managed to fly into a tiny little hole in one of these bread trays, and it made its nest. Great for the robin, really bad news for the tree nursery, because obviously that meant that all watering had to stop of that entire run until mummy robin had reared her chicks and they'd flown off, by which point obviously I'd kind of missed the germination window for those seeds. So yeah, wildlife, it is great, but you have to be very, very canny and on your game to stop them from eating all your seeds. They will always get some, but it's I've seen the mouse as well. I've seen him. He's a chubby little fella, but he's living his best life. He's eating all my sunflowers. He's eating everything.
And it's an education. I mean, it's certainly teaching your young people something about growing trees from seed, about nature, and about how it all works together or against each other, however you may look at it. But yeah, if you
more than one source of storing them, I guess that could be the key. Don't keep your eggs in one basket, as I say.
So definitely do think about protecting those seeds that you have gathered. Otherwise, those pesky rodents or birds or whatever might get in the way and scupper your tree growing plans. Your wing seeds. So you've got your sycamore, your field maple. You can see on the screen there. Ash seeds as well. So they will need to dry out a little bit. The seeds that are more green are more likely to germinate within the first year. So it's worth bearing that in mind if you see them in different states when you are collecting them. And then the wings aren't necessary for germination. You can get rid of those, and the seeds are in the kind of the slightly more bulbous bit themselves, near the stalk of the seed, and they're the part that will germinate. Corns might need, depending on how ripe they are, how tightly closed they are, it might take you a little while before they open. And put them somewhere warm and they will open up so that you can put them in a bag, shake them, and some of those seeds will come out. For some of them, if they are really tightly closed, it may be that they don't open in time for this germination. It may be that you get seeds for next year. But the one, like the image on the screen that you can see there, that's more open, that's where you're going to be more likely to get seeds straight away, or let it warm up for a bit inside and within a paper bag so that you can then shake it, get some of those seeds that fall out, and they will be what you will use. Your fleshy fruits, those seeds are hidden inside, and that's why those birds are so useful, because they eat the flesh from around the seed and deposit the seed very nicely for nature. However, we're not picking it up from there, we're taking the fleshy fruit itself. So once you've got that bowl, if you've used it to do the float test for the nuts, once you've done that, you can then put in your fleshy fruit, use a masher that you'd use for your potatoes, and mash that fleshy fruit to get the seed out from inside. And it's that seed from inside, from amongst that flesh, that you want to plant. Now, there's a fancy technical word on the screen, stratification. And seeds, like trees, are very clever. They've got very many inbuilt systems to protect themselves. And many seeds have a very clever way of protecting themselves from frost, and they won't germinate until until the frost has passed. So they will sense that it is cooled considerably, they will recognize that cold temperature, and when it starts to warm, they will start to germinate, which means that we need to stratify our seeds over winter. And that is where once we've processed our seeds, once we've got them out of the fleshy fruit, once we've got them ready, once we've tested them, we will put them into a pot with some stratification medium. Now, that is, all of this information is in the guide, but that will be compost mixed with sand and grit. So half compost, quarter sand, quarter grit. That's all mixed together. It helps the water to drain out more so they don't get too wet. Seeds in there, completely covered with that medium over winter. Leave them outside. They don't need to be protected from the cold. They need to feel the cold. So leave them outside. They will sense the cold. They will then notice when it warms up in spring, and they will start to germinate. Like we said, not all of them will, but hopefully a good number of them will. And that will mean that at the end of winter, March, April time, you can follow this all on the calendar that's in the guide, you will start to see those seeds are germinating and you'll be able to sow them. I do believe that you attempted a different form of stratification rather than the natural winter's cold temperature mat.
Yeah, so we have a cooking room that has 4 fridges in it. So I wanted to speed the process up a little bit. So we put some apple and wild cherry seeds into some containers, sort of slightly damp kitchen towel, a bit of cinnamon because that's a natural pesticide. It will stop fungus from growing on them. And it was all looking really good. I went away for a few weeks and I came back, and unfortunately somebody switched the fridge off, obviously decided to save some energy, and the temperature had rocketed up, and yeah, they'd all perished. They'd all started to grow, but then they'll just rotted out. So my top tip would be maybe try and source a very cheap fridge, which you can get on Gumtree or eBay or wherever. You can pick them up for 20 quid, because actually it's really, really useful to have that storage space to stratify all your different seeds. Otherwise you're down to, if it's a very warm winter, they may not in fact germinate at all. And
It's also, sorry, go on, Matt.
I noticed actually, because it says on there about compost, but actually from experience, better if you can is to try and use some kind of soil or topsoil with sand. Compost, it will work absolutely fine. It's just from experience, unless you water daily, or if it's a hot period, compost will dry out very, very quickly. Whereas soil tends to hold the moisture a little bit longer. So that would be my top tip. If you
and is that balance for that seed stratification point of the needing to stay moist but not too wet? So that's why we mix in with.
That was my first year failure completely, because I potted. Amazingly, I managed to mess up horse chestnuts. The first year 2 years ago, I put all of them straight into compost, into little pots in trays, and of course it rained and it stayed really damp, and then the mold flies all moved in, and that was it. That was the end of them. So yeah, it's really a very delicate balance. You do need really good drainage, but you do need it to remain at least a little bit damp, just to give it a chance.
Fab. Thanks, Matt. So once your seeds have germinated and you have sown them into a pot, it's really important to keep caring for them. And this is what we said at the beginning about planning, thinking about who is going to continue to care for your young seedlings and young trees. We suggest you have a watering chart so that you are monitoring how regularly you're watering them. It's just a good prompt for young people who are taking care of them, recording what they say, whether the soil's dry when they've watered it, whether it's been damp, whether they've needed to water it, whether it's been raining lots, just to kind of keep that in the forefront of their mind. We've got some fun tasks in there as well, some spot the differences, a healthy plant and an unhealthy plant, what the difference is, what can you see are the issues with the unhealthy plant, why might it have suffered, what has it succumbed to, so that you can avoid those things. So we've got lots of just reminders of the bare needs of what your young seeds need to make sure that they grow strong. And once you've got those seeds, seedlings that have grown, that have got to 20 centimeters or so, that have kind of shown real development, then you can start to pot them out. And like we say, this is where you can really see young people taking responsibility, that are kind of showing leadership qualities, that are showing real care and responsibility for nurturing their seedling as it grows, and then planting it to where it's going to be its final destination as a tree. So think about that when you plant it, from its pot to the ground itself. Think about this being a permanent spot for it, so not somewhere that you know is going to be potentially need moving in the future. We'd ideally like it to be in the same place for the remainder of its life. But also think about those threats. One of the things that we really suggest in terms of building that connection is naming the tree. One of our schools that names, that's done some seed planting, every pupil has given their seed a name, has planted a seed that will grow into a tree and given it a name. And it really helps to build that relationship with it, and kind of cheer it on and support it as it grows. So we do recommend that. Be aware of the different threats to your trees. It'll be different depending on where you are and what your site is like, but there are a number of different tasks in there just to make you aware of them, and not even the most obvious ones. There's also about diseases, biosecurity, other pests that might get to your trees that aren't necessarily the obvious, the squirrels and the mice and the like. And then some fun science tasks and experiments that you can do to help care for your trees as you go along, to check the quality of your soil. And Matt mentioned that's a nice one that could be done before you plant into the soil, before you plant it out into the ground, to check that that soil seems suitable, or if it needs any support itself. Doing some worm surveys. I've never ever met a group of young people when we haven't been planting trees and exploring nature that haven't had fun and excitement squealing at the worms, regardless of how old they are. So doing worm surveys to look at soil health is another really great way of keeping them thinking about the health of the soil and the nature that supports the trees. And continue to care for it on an ongoing basis. Monitor the health of the tree and support it and the wider ecosystem. There are some resources in there for health checks. So simple sheets that young people can fill in as they're monitoring their tree. So they go out and do regular checks, check how fast it's growing, check the circumference of the trunk, check if there's any cracks or splits in it, any parts of it have died. So just little forms that they can fill in, and they might do that a few times throughout the growing season. They might do that monthly. It's completely up to you how it works, but again, it encourages that responsibility. And we've already touched upon a number of the ways that we can boost the environment around, and we can support nature as a whole around in that ecosystem around the tree. Matt, just last one from you. I know that you have got a great team of young people that you've engaged in the ongoing care of your trees. How have you done that?
Yeah, so originally, before we actually teach ecology and sustainability now in the school. So, but before that started, we started up with an eco team. They're obviously your biggest resource. Lunch times, after schools, depends on your availability, I guess. But for me, it was mostly lunchtime. So I now have a head gardener who takes great pride in her role, and I have 10 deputies. You think, why do you need 10? But yeah, there's then another 2 eco reps from every class. So everybody's on a rota. So Monday through to Friday. I'm only in school on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So I'm really reliant on my my gardeners, as it were, my eco deputies. So they have obviously we teach them, we show them what they need to do, and then they're able to run it. They do need adult supervision. Obviously, you can't just send them off wild into the nether with their tools. But yeah, the person watching them generally is getting more skill because they're watching them, but not necessarily required to be skilled. It just needs somebody to keep an eye on them. And then yeah, literally we'll do all jobs from watering to looking after the animals to tending for the trees. So everything that's eco is done predominantly by children. And then if we have very large plans, like when we put the 2,000 trees in, we work with agencies and corporations near us to try and get volunteers in, and you'll find that they're all looking to get out of the office and get their hands dirty. They actually really enjoy it. So if you have trouble doing that, give me a shout. I can put you in touch with various different agencies that will be able to help you with that. But yeah, the key is use the resources you have, use the children, use the volunteers, the parents, anyone who will help, basically.
Thanks, Matt. That's a great point to finish on. One of the key elements I would say is do share what you're doing. Share your plans to grow trees from seed with young people, because as Matt's mentioned, when certain colleagues weren't aware and the fridge got switched off, it had an effect. But actually, people are out there looking to support and find ways to help. And in terms of supporting the care of your young trees as they grow, it's really useful to have as much support as possible. So do shout about the fantastic work that you're doing, shout about the fact that you're growing trees from seed, and I'm quite sure that you will garner plenty of support in your school communities, in your wider communities, in your, amongst families who do want to help and who do want to pitch in, because it's not only a fun and engaging task for young people, it is for us adults too. So do let other people know what you're doing. Like I said, the Q&A function is working, so if anyone does have any questions, then please feel free to ask. I will once again remind you, anything that you need, have a look at the Young Tree Growers Guide. All sorts of resources in there. You can download the section on the Great Seed Gather. You can download the section on caring for your tree. You can download the whole guide or individual resources. What I've shown you on screen today is just a small part of the resources that are available to you there. So please do explore it. Please do have a look at it. Like I said, we will share that link, but if you Google Young Tree Growers Guide, you will find it on there very quickly, very easily, and you'll be able to have a good look around it. You can also, if you have any questions, if you start to grow trees from seed, if you start your journey of growing trees from seed with young people and questions crop up, you can always contact us. You can email info@treecouncil.org.uk, or you could email schools@treecouncil.org.uk, and we will respond to you as quickly as possible and do our best to answer any questions that crop up or share any experiences. A big thank you to Matt, who has not only shared all of the wonderful things that his school is doing, shared his experiences, the good and the bad of growing trees from seed. And but even those experiences have helped you get to a really fantastic place today. They're a really inspirational school doing fantastic things. Community Tree Nursery is inspiring, as well as all of that eco stuff and sustainability work that they're doing, developing the school ground and developing their young people. Thank you, Claire, you're more than welcome. And just a final thank you once again to Hampshire County Council and Hampshire Forest Partnerships for working with us to create the Young Tree Growers Guide and supporting it. They're doing amazing things with the target of the 1 million trees planted and all of the work that they're doing with the communities and local landowners and businesses and young people to help meet that target. So a big thank you. We will share this recording if there's anything that you want to look back at. Oh, good advice. Bury in the pots and put in mesh over the top after falls 8 all of the first years. That is true, and it is something when you're thinking about the planning stage to think about the pests as well, and the creatures and critters that, whilst we love them being in nature, we don't want them eating our seeds, because you can go to a lot of work and we want to try and have a successful start as possible. And it can be disheartening when you find a vole or a squirrel or a mouse has eaten your entire collection of nuts that you were germinating and processing. So great tip there. Burying the pots and putting mesh over the top could work as well. Mesh from bags of oranges is good. Look at that, reusing as well. Fabulous, thank you. Then a couple of more minutes just in case there are any other questions or comments. But if not, a big thank you for joining and for giving your time on an evening to find out about how you might grow trees from seed with your young people and engage them in that tree growing journey. It is so important, it's so vital that we really engage that younger generation, and so we appreciate you giving the time to consider that and to consider how you might do that.